Welcome to the Acumatica ERP podcast. This is where we explore practical innovation for growing businesses. I'm Lauren O'Hara, and I am a product marketing manager here at Acumatica. And today we're joined by Ralph Torres, who is the Vice President of Operations for Eastman Music Company. Ralph has built his career leading complex operations across global businesses, with a strong track record of implementing and optimizing ERP systems to drive efficiency and growth. In this episode, we're going to discuss how Eastman has navigated growth and what it looks like to modernize and scale with Acumatica as the foundation. So welcome to the show, Ralph.
Thanks for having me here, Lauren. Nice to meet you.
You as well, finally. So to start, can you tell us a bit about your background in music and how it has influenced your career at Eastman?
There's kind of a direct correlation and not so direct correlation. So I am a musician. I went to college and school to study music, had aspirations of being a jazz musician of some sort, got out of college and started trying to gig and make money and figure out how to pay bills as being a musician. And I had no delusions of grandeur of what that life would look like. I understood how hard it would be to a musician making money, especially in a type of music that's not as popular with like jazz and stuff like that. But I started doing a lot of things. I was teaching private lessons. I was teaching at an after-school music program. I was gigging where I could and get gigs and stuff like that. And I just thought to supplement my income, maybe I could find some type of job related to the music industry. And when I started doing some searching, it ended up being, I was thinking more like working for a record label, like working for Sony or something like that in their jazz department or something that, directly related to my expertise. Doing the search, I just stumbled on Eastman Strings at the time. They called technically the business's name was Eastman Strings at the time. And this is back in 2008. And they were looking for a customer service representative. I was like, that's close to home. It's music related. Let me see what happens here. And then 18 years later, the company has grown many times over. When I started, it was 2 companies plus the factories in China. Now it's 11 companies plus the factories in China.
Wow.
Yeah. It was based in 2 countries when I started, 7 countries now. So it's been a big expansion over the past 18 years. So going into actually answering your question about how my music background correlates or relates to this is, one, I'm a musician. I work for a music manufacturer. That fits, right? So I started a customer service. One of my first opportunities to do something outside of customer service was managing our parts, and being a musician and doing pretty well at the customer service job. It worked pretty fast for me to be able to transition my just basic knowledge of instruments into managing a big, hard, complicated project like managing our parts. And then over the years, I've been involved in other product related things. I designed one of our best selling saxophones, the 52nd Street, with one of my colleagues at the time. We've advanced and grown it many times over since then. But, when we first started doing saxophones, I was the guy. So that was cool and fun as a musician to be able to say that I've had my hand in designing an instrument that I play. Mm-hmm. So there's things that like that have been really fun. But there's another piece of it, and it's not to get too philosophical about education and things like that, but music education is huge. All of my kids are going to go through music at least through the middle school level, because it's a unique human activity that requires use of the left and right brain, and you combine skills, analytical and creative skills, that you don't do in many other human activities. You just don't get that opportunity when you do other things. So being a musician, being in a practice room and practicing the same measure for hours on end to try and just get 2 notes right, that's a discipline that is required. And what happens in your brain just doesn't happen in other types of places. So being able to look at the complex structure of Eastman and analyze and understand how things correlate and work, I truly believe my music background, my music education feeds into my ability to manage something like this, because I got to be very creative, but I also have to be very data oriented as well.
I love that. And I mean, I agree. I'm an artist as well, and I'm in marketing, but I couldn't agree more. Like the exercising both sides of your brain and how that can help you just kind of be a more well-rounded human in general, right? I love it. That's a great way of looking at it. So tell me a little bit about just your role at Eastman. And I mean, we kind of see the transition from your starting off as in the jazz world and then going into Eastman. So
Yeah. My role now is pretty vague and specific at the same time, I guess, which kind of happens when you go up to the topper levels of a company, like, vice president of operations, CEO type positions in different companies are totally different bags depending on what the company is.
Mhm.
And, we have technically 16 physical entities, businesses throughout the world that are manufacturing or distributing product. And I have a hand in the operations in most of them, not directly in our China operations. Obviously, there's a language barrier, time barrier, but they do their manufacturing. But I am the liaison, and I do say, hey, this is what we need improved and things like that. So I do work with the China factories. I implemented Acumatica for them. They are using that
Oh,
as of
wow.
a year, close to a year and a half now. So there's still a lot of structural support I give to the factories, and definitely, talking to them about packaging and the way they ship things and all these. We have manufacturing facilities, Canada, United States. We just added an oval company in France this month. We have a brass instrument making in Switzerland. So we have, all across the world type manufacturing. A lot of my role for them is to make sure that they have the structural support
Mhm.
and they're able to schedule their production. And really, the only thing I deal with them is just making sure we keep our eye on the ball of just having the customer get what they ask for, because
Mhm.
we only have jobs because we provide a service that someone needs. And so making sure that they go past just the manufacturing stuff and get into like delivery and the functional parts of it, utilizing dashboards and the production scheduling and all the other tools that Acumatica has, so that someone on the other end can say, when's my trumpet going to be made? Or if I buy a trumpet, when can I get it made? Something like that. And specifically, since this is an Acumatica podcast, I have been able to add positions for that support. So I have someone who's in charge of, like, she's the ERP manufacturing admin. She's not at each location that manufactures, but all the companies that are using the manufacturing module in Acumatica, she's the one that helps them set it up.
Mhm.
She'll work with them on how they do their cycle counting, all the functional nuts and bolts of the puzzle. And then our distribution companies are the ones I probably have more of a hands-on role. One, Pomona, California, where I'm kind of the global headquarters of the company. We're pretty spread out, but that's the main office. And that's also our biggest distribution, our largest company revenue wise.
Gotcha.
So, and that's where I started and worked our way through. We distribute for North and South America, Eastman products, and some products for the other companies. That is where I'm most directly involved, just because I'm there every day, and I built
Mhm.
up the customer service team as it exists today in the distribution, the warehouse, and things like that. But I also work with our distribution company in Australia and in Europe, very closely,
Wow.
because that's kind of my piece of it, right? So I'm really support for the manufacturing companies, and I kind of more directly manage or help oversee the distribution.
Wow. I mean, so I have so many thoughts popping in my head as you're talking. So one of them is, it sounds like no day is the same. It sounds very wide reaching.
Yeah.
And kind of back to the, you're talking about, using both sides of your brain and kind of having to be creative with your problem solving and things too, I'm sure. My other thought was, I know in the success story video that we have, you talk a little bit about how quickly you can get people onboarded with
Yep.
Acumatica, and you talking about your, adding people, adding roles and things like that. I was wondering if you could just expand upon that a little bit more about how Acumatica helps that.
When I started at Eastman, they were on stage 100, which is an old product. It was antiquated. We were starting to get to the point where things were breaking and stuff like that. So moving to Acumatica, it was just total night and day as far as just basic user interface. We're just going to migrate actually tomorrow over to the modern UI. We're still in
Oh,
2024
cool.
R2 build. So that's fun because a lot of people are
Yeah.
excited about that. The people that have seen what the screens look like and things like that. But even just moving to Acumatica when we did in 2022, it was a night and day user interface. Obviously, for our existing employees, it was a culture shock. Like, I don't know where everything went, right? The people who've been doing the same job for 5, 10 years. I don't know where my buttons went. But it's all the new people that we've brought on. It's just you don't even have to tell them, right? Like, just the way the menu's set up, it's so much more intuitive to a modern type of interface, user interface. Something I joke about with our team is just like, I don't want to hear complaints about that. No, I need better training. You didn't get trained to use Facebook and you're posting every day. You don't need the type. And I say that kind of as a joke, but
Yeah, but
kind of feel like that about Acumatica. Obviously,
Mhm.
it's more complex than using Facebook because you're actually doing financial transactions. But you understand where the screen is set up. The buttons are pretty much in the same place on every screen. There's a green button. Click that one. It's pretty intuitively built, and that's one of the reasons why it is much easier for us to onboard and a new employee for sure.
Mhm. I love that point. So hard to quantify that, right? I mean, that is time savings, money savings, and engagement, employee engagement, right?
No, for sure. The
Right.
customer service job in Pomona is very complex. They are the transition from outside to inside. There's a lot of things they need to learn about the job. So the onboarding just takes time to learn that. But the computer interface aspect of that is so much less of a barrier, where we've gone from 3 weeks till we feel comfortable for someone starting to enter their own orders to it happens the first day. Actually, they
Wow.
start clicking through things, and then we could teach them the business as they're learning the computer system, rather than them kind of having to have been separate processes in the past.
Beautiful. I love that. That's a great point. Thank you for expanding upon that. Okay, so Eastman, I know, has experienced a lot of growth, right? You mentioned that even at the very beginning about how many, companies you all have now and where you've gone. So what are some of the operational challenges that you've experienced? How did you know it was time to modernize your platform from Sage?
It's kind of two reasons. One's there's just the basic logistics of running a company globally, almost 24/7. We have a retail location down in Australia that actually works on Saturday. So we're pretty close to a 24/7. We've got a window on my time Saturday to Sunday morning where someone's not at a business isn't actively working. Obviously, work over the weekends and salespeople always, entering orders and stuff like that. But it's pretty close to 24/7. Not as much when we switched over, but it was getting pretty close there. So just having support that's available, having access that was easy globally. Anyone who's used an older system, something that's not cloud-based, or how Acumatica is set up to where you can log in from a web browser, having to remote in as soon as you say, "Oh, I had to remote in," that's just like, well, that's a whole can of worms about how to actually, is the remote working today? If not, then, it's 12 a.m. my time. Europe's not going to be able to work today unless someone on IT who's on the call happens to answer their call and get the connect. Anyone who's worked in that type of environment
Mm.
understands how hard it is just to manage your 8-hour day, let alone expand that to a 24-hour day.
Yeah.
That was huge. Access, big, big, big time thing. And then also, Mike, our IT support company, very concerned about security. All of a sudden, we're moving to a web-based thing, and you lose all that security of remoting in. So Acumatica had checked off all the boxes for us on that. That was something that we were looking for with whatever it was, as that was a piece of the problem. The other piece of the problem was our data was just getting so hard to use and analyze because of the structure in Sage, where every company is its own company. We had model numbers that might have been technically the same product, but maybe there was variation across the companies. Sometimes I started getting to the point to where, like, I don't think that transaction happened right. Was there a data problem? And then sometimes our support would be like, "Oh yeah, I rewrote the data. It should be fine now." So that sounds terrible. How's that even
Yeah.
possible? How could you? But that's what, that's it was buggy, right? It was, you got to fix it, and they had workarounds and ways to fix it. So I was just absolutely losing confidence. Like, did that transfer even happen? Things would get hung up, and then I don't know the technical aspect of it, but it was started getting very nerve wracking.
Mhm.
Some of the things we were hearing from our Sage support partner that we had at the time. So that was the other piece. It's like, look, if we're going to keep adding companies, we need to have a much more streamlined of doing the reporting.
Yeah.
And then on the second half of it, I also need to be able to make sure people can log in every day. This is getting too hard. People are traveling more and more and more and more and more. They want to be able to access the ERP system. We did train our sales staff to enter their orders in Sage, and they were able to do it, but that became a barrier because it was just they had to go to their hotel room and then log in, go into the remote server because they were going to get their orders in for the day, and it's not working, and it's just really hard without having the flexibility for the people that do want to do work late at night on the weekends to
Mhm.
fit their life or their travel, however that may be.
A little bit more about the multi-company ease of use part.
The chart of accounts is all the same. So that just since all the data kind of has to flow through finance in some way,
Now,
just having a singular chart of accounts makes life really easy. We do have to have separate tenants, kind of a specifically complicated reason why we had to do that with where multi-currency and multi-tenant. And then if you have manufacturing, but it still works totally fine for us because the data structure is the same underneath everything. So that's the huge piece about multi companies. The last 3 companies we added, I did it myself. Our VAR didn't even help with it. Obviously, they helped set up all the work in the past to do it. Literally, our VAR was on vacation while I created the oboe company in France. He didn't even know about it until he got back from vacation, and we were joking about it that's not needed. So, if you have someone who's dedicated and willing to learn the product and learn the software, then you can do a lot of things on your own where I wouldn't even thought possible. Even when we first started with Acumatica, but definitely not with Sage. When we added the new oboe company, I already have my attribute structure for stock items. So as soon as my product data guy just added those, and then, we just need to add that company the company ID to all of our reports. It wasn't automatic, but we knew exactly what needed to be done in our reporting. I have one guy who does most of our reporting. He was just able to add it to all the reports. He's like, yeah, I'll get these, the ones that we look at every day, I'll get those done by the end of the week. The ones that we need for monthly reviews, I'll get those done by the end of the month. No problem. Like that, just being able to do that and everything just fits underneath because the infrastructure on the bottom is all the same.
that's amazing. I love that. I know it's not super simple, but the way you say it, makes it seem like you're a magician, right? Like, oh, look, I can and problems, you go back to the problem solving thing, right? Like how much fun it is to just try to go, I can do this.
I will say it's Acumatica didn't tell me to do this. So if anyone's listening to this, the work is internal. You got to figure out your structure. You have to figure out how to make your big buckets flow into your small buckets and what does matter to you for reporting and then what doesn't matter to you for reporting. Once you do that work, the infrastructure and the system set up in Acumatica to make it easy. Like we use attributes extensively, but there's other things that we could use, like country of origin rule versus the company that makes it. That tells us whether or not it's distributed or manufactured. We can get creative with how we structure the data so that we can say this is the data point we actually want to report across. And then because you do that extra work, because you get that structure set up, then that's what makes it dynamic to me and scalable and easy to add once you have that structure underneath.
So I guess that kind of like leads me right into kind of the whole implementation question, right? Like you're talking a lot about making sure you know where you want your data to go, right? So can you tell us a little bit about what the implementation was like and, what stands out to you and, how your team, like you're obviously a champion, right? You're obviously a super user of Acumatica. So how does your team also help make that successful?
Yeah. So going to the implementation part, there's no way around it. It's hard. It's still one of the hardest things I've ever done in my professional career by far, especially going from something like Sage to Acumatica. It's such a cultural shift for our staff. It's painful. It's painful and it's hard because you're asking the entire organization that uses the ERP system, which is usually a big chunk of the company, to change the biggest tool that they use. So that's painful and hard. You just have to set expectations that this is not going to be easy. That's the biggest piece. Just understand, there's no version of this that's easy. Even if the ERP system automated it, even if we get to the point to where none of us has jobs because AI is doing it, it's still going to be difficult because people are not doing what they did yesterday. And that's very hard to make humans go through. We don't like change. So with that, we had a specifically unique problem in switching over, or the way we decided to tackle it. And that's that we have 3 companies at the time based in the US that our sales staff works across. So when we decided how we were going to do this, the big decision was, do we just move Eastman, the main company, over? Or do we take that 3 company block over?
Yeah.
And I decided to do the 3-company block. I would still decide to do that, but it sucks.
But it was hard. It was hard.
It was
Hard.
hard.
3
Really
times the degree of difficulty.
more than that, exponentially hard, because there's something that we had to do that at once that we wouldn't have had to do, and that's all the mappings. Because in Sage, we sell to X company. Well, it's X1, X2, and X3 in the 3 different companies, even though they're all X. So when we were going to bring over our open sales orders, open AR, I had to map this ID in Sage, this ID in company 1, 2, 3 is now going to be this company in Acumatica. So there was a lot of work with the mappings, a lot of clean on the accounting side. The chart of accounts were different for all the companies because they were specific to that company. Because Eastman's chart of accounts accounts for woodwinds, brass winds, guitar sales, percussion sales, right? But Haynes's chart of accounts, our flute company, only had woodwinds in it, and they weren't built at the same time by the same people, even though it was the same company. So there was a lot of prep work in order to get that. But the biggest piece of this is, and I've said it on stage, I've said it in the other podcasts that I've done about this thing, don't recreate your process. Don't recreate your data that you have in your existing structure. That's why you're leaving your existing structure. So really, it was a lot of conversations with me and the CFO and our controller and the accounting side. Now, I'm not an accountant at this point in my life, in my career. I kind of do know a lot about accounting because of interfacing with the ERP system and how much that, obviously, that's the big link behind everything. But I didn't really grasp 100% the complications of the chart accounts until I started this project and understanding. And, they were starting to put things together. I was like, guys, I think we're overthinking this, either between product attributes or sub accounts or something that I've seen in a demo. I don't think you need a separate GL for that type of sale. You don't need a saxophone GL and a flute GL. We just need woodwinds. Like, we just care about the woodwind division, right? Well, yeah. Okay, I can give you sales based off of product data, based off of the item class, based on an attribute from the item class. I could do all these other things through my reporting. So a big piece of this was me at least just seeing what the report availability was. Like, we didn't do Velixo at the beginning, but we knew it existed. So it was a lot of educating myself if I'm going to have to take over the reporting on this, or at least manage the structure of how we do it. Understand the reporting tools. Really understand the reporting tools as fast as you can. Understand the concept of what a generic inquiry is. Understand, if you're going to look at a product like Velixo, how does that flow through? Because I didn't know how to write a generic inquiry, but I understood they existed. And I saw one get created from our VAR. I said, just show me what this is. That was enough for me to go, all right, I can get there eventually. Let's just figure out the basic structure now. So a lot of this was unwinding all the specific things that we did in Sage and bringing them into the biggest buckets that would give us the minimum amount of information that we need to operate. And then that is what we did a lot of work, translating the information for the 3 companies over into those big categories of stuff. So we were able to go to, like, I don't remember the number, hundreds of GL accounts to account for our sales, to 5 now.
Wow.
Now they're just by the big divisions. So at a top level for the CEO, he can see how his woodwind business is doing versus his brass and wind globally throughout, with sell-through reports and all these other things now. But even then, we were able to say, all right, well, we're selling tubas. We were selling our basic structure of instruments based off of item class. But on the GL side, it's just 5 big giant categories.
Wow.
But if he wants reporting for COGS of that item class, no problem. Now we can do that. But again, I understood we can get there. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a combination, kind of what you said about, not recreating the data that you already have in your or not recreating the structure, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, making things much simpler. And that sounds like it was a combination of, the platform of Acumatica and your ability to look at your data and say, this is how we want it to be in Acumatica, to make it simpler.
Yes. Then when we did the actual implementation, we were lucky-ish. This was November 2022.
Okay.
This was after COVID logistic nightmare where there were hundreds of container ships parked out of the port of Los Angeles, like all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
The floodgates had opened. So we weren't hurting for orders. We weren't hurting for sales orders to ship. So we did it note specifically in November because that's after our busy season. Our busy season is after school season because we do a lot of school business. So timing is another thing. Make sure you do it. Not there's never time to do anything, but make sure you do it when you can manage. And you're going to hurt a little bit because you think you know what an invoice is going to look like, but you don't realize the different versions that you've created of your existing invoices. Oh, I forgot we needed that. I forgot we needed that. So there's going to be a lot of work once you implement it, or maybe not. Maybe you've done this before and you have a VAR that does all that setup. But for most companies, I'm pretty sure this is what happens. You think you know what's going to happen, and then day one, all bets are off. You're just flying by the seat of your pants for a week or two, and eventually your team starts understanding how to push the orders, how to push the invoicing through the accounting department. You start getting these repetitions of doing things and understanding why can't I don't have inventory in the right place. You start learning the issues because, and Sage would let you do a lot of things just because it would let you do it, where Acumatica definitely has a lot more. You have to do it the right way for the financial transaction to happen correctly. So you got to do it the right way. You can't do it out of order. So a lot of it was learning that through the beginning. And one thing I did is immediately the sales staff, where's my report? Where's my information that I always can get? It's gone. Remember when I told you we were doing this? That's what it meant. When I said it was going to all be gone, that's what I meant. Now it's gone. So I was really strict with the whole team at the beginning. Don't ask me to create anything for you until you show me what reports in Acumatica you've already tried to use. So use I didn't want to create out of the box, recreate everything that we had before. Yeah. There was one daily sales goal report that we had out of Sage through one of the reporting tools that we need to have. So I did work with our VAR at the time. Before the transition, I worked with ISS on this, and I said, hey, Troy, I really need this report. Just get me this one. Everything else we'll figure out afterwards. So when we were over, and when we got through that initial hump of just getting invoices out, then the questions started coming in. How do I look this up? How do I look this up? You see in the sales order module, you see where it says reports? Go there and start clicking buttons. Figure out the tools that we just paid for before you ask me to make a new one.
Yeah.
And then we found where the gaps were, right? We're like, okay, I get it. I see why this doesn't work for the way we do business. Let's tweak this report. I see we want information, but a little different way. Let's pay to have this report tweaked. All right. Now we're over that initial hump. Teach me GIs. And then ISS, our VAR, all right, let's learn how to do some GIs. So he built some GIs with me. I was like, okay, I get it. I could do some of this. And then that's when we added one of our first new global operational ERP positions was a reporting engineer. So he was someone at one of our companies who was doing a lot of really good work, helping them set up their dashboards and creating GIs for the manufacturing side. It's like, okay, this guy understands it. So I stole him over, and now he does the global reporting for the company. And he's not trained in this. He's a musician himself, but he's also a techie, computery guy. He almost went into a computer science degree, but decided to do music. And so it's a great job for him now. He gets to work for a music company.
Yeah.
And now we're playing around with computers all day and write reports for people. And obviously they're much more complicated and structured the way we have them now. But, we built on what we learned in those early stages of finding the gaps in the reporting, then doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm hearing obviously we talked already a little bit about ease of use and how that can help people adopt. But I think also, Ralph, what you're trying to say or what you're saying is that it's also super customizable, right? Like you can sit there and take Acumatica and say, okay, we need this report. Let's figure out a way to get that report, right? Yeah. Or take what is existing and modify it to suit your needs, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We learned a lot by we don't do a lot of report designer stuff. That's kind of antiquated, invoice, but we do need to have invoices, right? And we need to have that information shut out. But even something like that, being able to get our HS import tax codes on all of our different product. Well, it's not that easy for us because we have 4 different companies in Europe and they have different HS codes. No, 3 different companies in Europe and 1 in Canada, and they all have different HS codes and they're all in the same tenant. How the hell am I going to get them to have their HS code print up for their exports? And that's where we just use attributes. I'll just create an attribute for HS code Canada, HS code UK. So now that's an attribute for the item. Now we could add that to the report designer. So that's how that works, right? If this branch put this HS code. So there's a lot of things that I was able to learn through just looking at the report designer, seeing there's one great thing that's a huge difference from our Sage, but I would assume it's similar to most modern ERP systems. There's so much, one, with the Acumatica community, two, the training that Acumatica has on the Acumatica educational website, and three, so many of these resellers want your business that they're just putting out free training to try and get you to know their company. But it's fantastic content. There's so much information on YouTube and the Acumatica assets for training. That's a huge thing, going back to just even user adoption. But being able to ourselves learn how to do generic inquiries with the existing generic inquiries in Acumatica, and that's how they built that, and then just expanding on that. It allows us to get creative and figure out solutions to problems on our own without having to go ask someone else.
And there you go, the creativity thing again, right?
Yep.
I love it. So we often hear at Acumatica that people, and I know you've spoken about this too, but about visibility. People enjoy the visibility of the data, right? Can you talk a little bit about how having that central, I know we've talked about it a little bit, touched on it, but specifically how, having that one centralized source of the truth has really changed the way that you and your team can make decisions and view, and react to things?
Yeah, there's two types of data now that I'm kind of learning as we get more through there. So there's the data that you need to act on today, and then there's the data that you need to analyze to make decisions against. And we're learning better ourselves throughout this process. What's a dashboard in Acumatica is better at versus a Evolixer report's better at. So we're redoing our dashboards in Acumatica to give that visibility of, you were supposed to ship this yesterday, you didn't, now it's red, take care of it. So there's a lot of that type of visibility, right? Like the green, red, yellow, green, red is so universal. We understood if it's yellow, you got to worry about it. So being able to define those things and then translate that to a piece of data in Acumatica and just give it to someone on a dashboard, hugely beneficial. Some of the things we don't even go to that point. We just create a generic inquiry. I'm like, I don't want to see any shipments that are not this month by the halfway through the month. We should have shipped everything that's a shipment within the last 2 weeks. Don't let any shipments go. If it is, then I want you to grab resources and get that shipment taken care of and figure out why it's held up. So that's the type of thing that we can do with just, basic visibility of data that makes it pretty easy. Then there's the much more complex things of figuring out how our company is doing in this US version of tariff, no tariff, tariff, no tariff, tariff, no tariff. And then how to land, and even with that, we were able to talk about flexibility, right? We don't really worry about landed costs at Eastman because we buy from ourselves. So I'm like, I don't care what the shipping versus the invoice, the amount was. We're buying from ourselves. I can't buy a trumpet from a different person. So I'm not using landed cost to analyze vendor total spend type thing, right? But all of a sudden, tariffs are a huge portion of the purchase price of a product. So now we added landed cost. So we were able to do that. Like Acumatica had landed costs. So we were able to figure out a creative way to get the tariffs into landed costs. So our COGS made sense with whatever price increases we had to do to try and recover some of the difference, some of the gap. So obviously this last year, very difficult to manage tariffs. We've been able to do it. And even as far as using user-defined fields to help us understand what sales orders were affected by a tariff increase versus not. So that's, again, creativity. So that's the type of visibility we're able to kind of think through. Well, I need this as a result. This is my input. What buttons are we going to press in Acumatica, and what gaps do we have in those buttons in order to get that result? So I want to know if someone entered an order and we had to raise the price on an order to help cover tariff cost, and did we do that on that sales order? User defined tariff charge. That's a check mark on a sales order. So there's a lot of different ways. That's an example of where that gives that. And then that ties into the visibility. Now that whatever happens in the world with tariffs going forward, we have the visibility on what happened to things that happened in the past and how those were affected. Or bigger scope things of just like, all right, we need to look through all of our balance sheets and income statements. So we can have one consolidated report that allows us to see that. A very complex part that we have is that we buy and sell from ourselves a lot. So I don't care if we sell $1 million of clarinets out of Bakun into the US if I still have $1 million of clarinets in stock in the US. I care about the sell-through. So we're able to create reports now where we have 4 different entities buying and selling from each other to get something from point A to point B. But now we have a sell-through report where we're able to say, this is what we're actually selling outside of ourselves, not just within ourselves. This is what we sold to ourselves. This is what we sold outside of ourselves. And this is how that impacts our entire global financial picture that you wouldn't get if you're just looking at a singular company's P&L.
Yeah, for sure. That just sounds so it sounds so complicated, but fascinating. Back to the visibility part, be able to see all of that and really understand what you have, yourselves versus another of your entities.
Yeah.
How is your team using Acumatica on a day-to-day basis? Can you tell me a little bit about that, Ralph? Like, how many people are in it, and how do you leverage the power of Acumatica?
Almost easier to say how many people aren't.
I love it.
Like the manufacturing floor, not every user is using it. The warehouse, none of the packers aren't using it. But there's a lot of people in our business that are using it. We have over 200 plus users that are actively using Acumatica at least weekly. Most users are using it daily. Most users are probably 6 hours of their day is Acumatica work versus it combined with, email management.
Yeah.
Things like that. So we use it extensively. We want to be able to run our business without using it. And you already said this earlier, but I think the easiest way to say this is, this Acumatica is our one true source of data, but that's only accurate if it's accurately reflecting what's happening in the real world. So in every way that we need to have a digital representation of what happened in the physical world, we're trying to use Acumatica for that need. Because then at the end of the day, those all tie into the financials, and that's what this is really about, is it is reporting, this is what we sold and here's how much we made. Being able to do that, again, with the ultimate end goal of just providing the customer what they needed.
Yeah. Well, obviously, yeah. That's the biggest goal, right? So you have a lot of people who use Acumatica, like you said. So talk a little bit, just real quickly. I know this is something that we talk about a lot at Acumatica because we're very proud of that. The user licensing and how that works and how that benefits Eastman.
Yeah, absolutely. With everything, you have other costs when you hire a new person or you put someone in a new position, right? And there's IT costs or one of those type of costs that can just explode overnight. You don't realize it. Everything's going on to a SaaS consumption model, right? And usually it's per user base, right? We're looking at solutions for, how do we maintain our machines? Are we going to use an Acumatica thing, an outside thing? We're always looking at things on how we're going to implement a product that does something. But then you get that per user fee. It's like, scalability, it just kills it, right? You're like, okay, well, now I got to pay $60 a user. It's not going to break a company like ours, but I'm not going to let every user use it. Now I have to do more work to figure out what's the minimum amount of people I can get a license for and still get what we need out of it and not have that become a barrier.
Yeah.
Right. And if I get that wrong on one side, we wasted our money because we can't use the product. If I get that wrong on the other side, I wasted our money because we're paying for seats that we don't need. Yep. So just managing IT, that's probably my biggest gripe about all of it. Like, you just have to constantly think, a person's just not a person with work. There's a dollar above their head. Now I have to figure out what's the ROI on that, right? I don't want to calculate that out. I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. So that's why Acumatica's usage-based pricing versus user-based is amazing.
Yep.
If I have 50 users that use it one day a week, or if I have 1,000 users that use it one day a week, it costs the same because that's not a lot of usage. If I go from 100 users that use it all day long to 1,000, then there's going to be an increase in price. But we've already had to increase our license a few times because we've added more companies and have more usage. And, I guess we're sending out too many emails now. So I'm writing for the bill and I was like, that's not too bad. That's fine. So when we have had to increase our pricing because of usage, it's definitely been well within reason of more use that we're getting out of it, because that required us to get that trigger that we're over our usage. But yeah, not having to worry about users, and that's ERP cost is just not part of it. I already have to pay for their Microsoft license if they're going to be a user because we're using single sign-on. I already have to pay for IT support for them on that. I already have to pay for their computer. I have to pay. When you add employees, it's not just their salary, it's all then their benefits, and then their just costs to keep them working and give them the tools they need.
Yeah.
You hire a warehouse worker, they usually don't cost you more unless you got to buy a new forklift, but one warehouse worker is not going to cost you that. But when you deal with the people that interface with the ERP system, it's
Right.
just so much more. We did in Sage, we used to have, it was concurrent licensing, wasn't as bad, but then 3:00 every day. "Hey, I can't get in Sage. Who's still logged in? Make sure you're logged out." Like, that was terrible. It gets rid of a big barrier as far as scaling up the product. When we just bought a new company, if they don't have a lot of users, but I'm also not worried about paying for them to access Acumatica. We got to pay for their email and things like that, and everything else as far as Acumatica goes is fine. That whole company is not going to add enough usage to kick us up to the next tier. So it's not costing us anything to add that company and you have them utilize Acumatica.
Yeah. I think that's a great way of putting it. And, and just knowing how many people you already have using it, like you said, on a day-to-day basis or a weekly basis, or that's a huge advantage. So great. For other organizations who are kind of early on, maybe they're looking at ERP solutions, what kind of advice, Ralph, would you give to them? I know we've talked about like the data, and preparing and understanding the fact that it's going to be kind of painful in the big picture, right? But could you give us some other pieces of wisdom from your toolkit?
I think I kind of said a lot of it already in the whole implementation part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just reiterate what I already said about don't recreate your processes.
Yeah.
Especially if you're if you're willing to do the work to move away from an ERP system, I think it's a safe bet to assume you're doing things the way you're doing certain things because of the limitations of your ERP system.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Oh, I kind of click here and then I click here, then I click here, then I send that report to this person, then it goes to that person. Everything has crazy workflows. Make sure you're looking at all your workflows in a very objective way, because they were created subjectively. Pull yourself out of that, look at it objectively, and really understand if this is the way you want to be doing it.
Yeah.
If it's not the way you want to be doing it, figure out how you want to do it. Then when you start doing your search for your ERP system, see how much it has to change from what you would really want to do versus what you're having to do right now.
Yeah.
Workflows, work design of processes in how you interface with your ERP system. That's the piece to really step back and say, what are we doing here? How do I really want to do this? I'm sure you're doing it right now because of one, the limitations of the system. But even aside from that, you probably have 4 or 5 different CFOs or controllers or whatever positions in accounting that created the process that you have right now. And it's a hodgepodge of things. This is really your opportunity to hit a giant reset and do things in a more structured, in a more streamlined fashion.
Yeah, that's really well put. That's awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to do 3 quick questions. This is our lightning round. And basically, you can take as long as you want to answer the question, but I don't want you to think too hard about it, like come up with what comes in your brain first. So my first one is music related. So what piece of music that do you never get tired of? Like what one piece of music just pops in your head that you will never get tired of?
Miles Davis, So What?
Oh, nice. If you could automate one thing in your daily life outside of work, what would it be?
Meal planning.
I'm with you there.
My worst. What's for dinner is by far my most hated question from my kids every day. Yeah.
I actually have a calendar in the kitchen that I plan them out just so that I don't have to have that question. So
then you're still going to ask the question.
Yes.
Or you'll get the gripes. That's meal planning.
No griping. If it's up there, that's what we're having. All right, good. And then what's a habit or mindset that's really helped you stay effective as a leader at Eastman? And, obviously, like we talked about how quickly you guys have grown and all the exponential growth you've seen. Like what's that habit or mindset that really helps you?
In my specific role of operations, but as a businesses in general, everything, we exist to solve problems. A customer exists because they have a problem. If you don't solve their problem, they're no longer going to be a customer. So problem solving through critical thinking, that is my habit. That is what I am always trying to instill in my workflow and in all my employees' workflows.
Very nice.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah. Yeah. What's the core, right? Like you said, I mean, ultimately you want happy customers. So,
yep.
And I know that sounds so simple, but it's not, right?
It's very hard to get there, but don't lose fact of that. And specifically, I don't want to say I want happy customers. I want to solve their problem because that obviously is how you have a happy customer. It's still that mindset of I'm solving problems. So you have to understand the problem to solve it. And that's why I say it that way.
And I mean, it definitely keeps your life spicy, right? Because you get to be solving multiple problems a day, day in and day out. So
it helps me from getting burnt out too, because you get that personal gratification of like, oh, I fixed something.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. All right. Well, Ralph, thank you so much for joining us today. I know we talked about a lot of things, so it's been really valuable and really, really rewarding to me. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. And it was fun to do.
Yeah, it was. It really was. Thank you. Thank you to our listeners as well for tuning into the Acumatica ERP podcast. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss other conversations about practical innovation for growing businesses.